All right, hello students. So what I have here is a video that's going to go through the steps required to do the data analysis using Microsoft Excel for Lab 6, Solids and Turbidity. You can pause the video at any time to take a look at what I'm doing for each of the steps. Let's get right into it. The first thing you're going to need to do is go to Moodle, and you're going to have to download this file here, this Lab 6 group data file. And here is all of the data that we collected in class. And what you're going to have to do is take all of this data and basically input it into Microsoft Excel. So open up Excel. You can see that's what step number 1 is. By the way, I'm going to follow the exact same steps that are in the lab manual and basically go through them one by one. So step 1 is open up a new Excel file and enter all the data and make sure you include the following things: a descriptive title, observations, all rough data collected by the class, not just the data that you collected yourself. And make sure you use the heading shown on the table in the lab manual. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So here is a new Excel file. So open up an Excel file. Remember, one of the things that you need to do is add a title. So we'll call this table 1, and I'll just say descriptive title. You can give a title any name that you see appropriate. And what you want to do is take a look in the lab manual. You can see that there are several titles or headings that you're going to want to use. So first one is water sample, and second one is observations. So right away I want to show you one of the functions in Excel is that you can resize your columns. So if you take a look at this, it says water sample, but it's partly overlapping the observations one. So if I go over here between A and B, I can size this to whatever size I want. So that's kind of handy. In observations, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to keep on going, and I recommend that you follow the exactly what is done in the lab manual. So I'm going to finish putting these things in and show you a couple of other tricks as we go along here. So settleable solids, I'm going to stretch that one over here. The next one is total solids. Notice now for total solids, there's a few different things to add, right? We have the mass of the dish, and the units, of course, are in grams. So I'm going to resize all of this here to make sure we can read everything nice. We have the mass of the dish plus the residue, and that is also in grams. I'm going to resize that. And we also have the volume. So the volume of water sample. Of course, I need to make sure I get all my spelling correct. And the volume, I'm going to put the volume in liters. Okay, so a couple of tricks here before I move on. One, I don't want you to worry too much about making it too fancy. If you want, you could put these things in bold. Maybe I'll do that. And that's fine, but I don't want you to worry about getting things too fancy because we're going to do that a little bit later on. But one thing that you can do that's going to help you a little bit later on is basically this total solids. It's for all of these 3 values. And so you can select these 3 cells, and up at the top here, there should be a little box, and it should say merge and center. Now my screen is a little smaller, so you can see it's just showing the icon, but I click on that merge and center. You can see what that does is it makes all of those cells all one and centers the title for that. So go ahead and do the same for the total suspended solids and also for the turbidity, and add all those titles in. The other thing I'm going to show you that that also might be helpful is if I click on this and if I click this little thing here, wrap text. So watch what happens when I shrink this. I can shrink that and I can make it a little bit taller, and it actually wraps the text around. You can see what it does. The text goes down underneath like that if I resize it. So in doing that, what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that everything kind of fits nicely how I want it to fit. But don't worry too much about that, really. I'm just showing you a couple of tricks, and they're going to maybe become important a little bit later on as we go along. And then once you have all of that, you can start adding your water samples. So the first one, of course, is tap water. You can make your observations. Maybe there's not enough room for your observations. Make sure observations are detailed. So the tap water was clear, and maybe I'll put a second observation that there were no visible particulates, and so on. So go ahead and do that. Make sure you take a look at the sample in the lab manual. I will show you what the sample looks like here. This is what I have in your lab manual. You can see there's some data in there. You may notice I have borders and things like that. Don't worry about that right now. Just get the data in. That's what's important, and make sure it's complete. And then you can move on to the next step. So step number 2, it says when you're done that, you can name this worksheet. You're going to name the tab. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. And I'm going to show you with that rough sheet that I started. So here's the sheet. And if you go down here at the bottom of the screen, in the bottom right, you can see it says sheet 1. So what you can do is you can double click on that and you can name it anything you want. So you can name it rough data, just like that. And that's what you need to do for part B. Now, number 2 says, take that data and copy it and name the second tab solids analysis. So there's 2 ways to do this, and I will show you how to do that right now. One is you can add a second tab by hitting this plus down here. You can see that adds a second tab. They're calling it sheet 2. And what you can do is you can copy this just in the usual way. You select everything and then you can hit copy. But when you do that, some of your formatting may not necessarily carry over. So I'm going to show you a better way to do this. I'm just going to delete that tab that I made. Is you can right click on your rough data tab. And if you take a look, there's an option for move or copy. So I'm going to click that and make sure you click create a copy, and you can hit OK. So now you can see there's 2 of them now, the rough data and rough data 2. Now, rough data 2, this is the one I'm going to be working on, and we're going to call this one here solids analysis. So this is going to be your second tab, and it's going to look something like that. So let's go back and see what our next instruction is. So the next instruction says, as shown in the lab manual, you need to insert a bunch of columns. So let's do that now. Here's my solids analysis tab. You may notice I have a whole bunch of tabs down there because I have different versions from different semesters, but just ignore those. So you're gonna have your new solids analysis tab with all of your data, and I only have the tap water put in. This is actually a previous year's data, but it says what you need to do is add a column for average turbidity. You need columns for total solids, average total solids, total suspended solids, and average total suspended solids and total dissolved solids. So let's take a look at this, right? We have our rough data, and what I want is I have the rough data here for total solids. So what it's asking me to do is to insert a column to give for the calculation for that. So where I want that is at the end of this between H and I. So what I can do is I can just select there on I, and when I right click, you can see there's an option to insert a column. So there it is. I just inserted the column. And but the thing is I need 2 columns. I need one for total solids and I need one for the average. So I'm going to do that twice. So let me fill in the values there. So this one here is going to be total solids, and the final units are going to be milligrams per liter. And then this one here is going to be average total solids. And hopefully this will all make sense in a few minutes once we get to the calculation part. So milligrams per liter. Okay, so that's good. What I'm going to do is just highlight this to show where I'm putting in the new columns. I got to do the same thing over here for total suspended solids. So I'm adding 2 more columns. Right click and hit insert. And so we're going to have TSS and milligrams per liter. And we have average TSS, and that's also going to be in milligrams per liter, of course, milligrams per liter, just like that. Okay, I will highlight that. And The last one is for turbidity. I need average turbidity, so I don't really need to insert a column because I'm over there at the end. That's not really necessary, but what I'll do is put that in there, and I'm just going to put a note that this is the average turbidity, and the units are, of course, NTU. There we go. Like I said, don't worry about the borders and stuff. If you do the borders and all this now, it's just going to get all messed up later. You can worry about that in your final kind of report. So there we go. We have some extra columns added in, and that is the next step here. Okay, so once those are added in, we're going to start doing the calculations. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Not too bad. We've done calculations before. But what you need to do is kind of do one of these each one at a time. So let's take a look at these formulas. So this is the formula for total solids, of course, right? And so you can see what we have is three numbers that we calculated. We have the mass of the dish and the residue, the mass of the dish that we took before we put the sample in, and then of course we have the sample volume, and that's going to be in liters. The masses are going to be in grams, of course. And we multiply this by 1,000 milligrams per gram in order to get our final milligrams converted from grams to milligrams, of course. So what I want to do is do all of this in the spreadsheet in the correct box. Okay, so keep this formula in mind, and what I'll do, actually, maybe what I'll do is I'll copy this formula, and I'll bring it right over the spreadsheet so we can have it there for a reference. So let's go over to the spreadsheet and let's do that right now. So there's the formula right there for reference, okay? I will just have it handy right there. There it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this box here, I'm filling in I7. And remember, in order to do a formula, you've got to do equals. So I'm going to start off with an equals. And there's a handful of things here that we need to do. And so one thing that I often do is rather than putting the multiplied by 1,000 at the end, I'm going to put the multiplied by 1,000 at the beginning. It's just going to make my formula a little bit easier. Then I'm going to put times, and the masses I'm going to put in the brackets because I want the subtraction to happen first. This is important for the order of operations. Okay, so the mass of the dish plus the residue. So that would be this one right here. And if I click on it, it's G7. And then subtract the mass of the dish, which is F7. And then I'm going to finish the bracket on that. And the last thing is to divide by the volume. So notice I have inputted my volumes here in liters. Remember, we use it 40 milliliters. I've already converted them to liters when I entered the data in. So divide by that last value. And this should give me the calculation. So I'm going to hit enter and see what it looks like. 240. So that sounds about right. If you remember, it's very easy to copy this formula basically just by dragging it down. And that gives me the calculation for all the values. The next formula is total suspended solids. So remember, this formula is basically exactly identical to the total solids formula, except for we're looking at a filter instead of the dish. But the good news is in our spreadsheet, so I'm going to go back to our spreadsheet, and maybe I'll bring this formula with us here as well. If you want me to do that, I can do that. It's very easy to do. But if you look at the spreadsheet, I have it set up that my total suspended solids are exactly in the same place. So what I can actually do is copy this formula here. So I'm just going to copy it by right-clicking, and I'm hitting copy, and I'm pasting that formula right over there. And it should work. And in this case, we have a little bit of a problem. What has happened here? Let me just take a look. I'm getting a negative number. Okay, yes, I see what the problem is. Okay, my mass of my filter and residue is actually less than my mass of my filter. This is not surprising for tap water because the tap water probably had nothing really in it in terms of suspended solids. And so that last significant figure is usually not very significant at all. So this, eventually we're going to change that to 0, but I'm going to copy this formula down here like that. So this gives me my my calculations for my total solids and my total suspended solids. And that is all ready to go. So what I need to do now is get average for everything. And remember, we used this average formula before in the other Excel lab, and that's what the formula looks like. So let's do that now. So over here, I just need to do my average once. I'm going to hit equals, and I'm going to put average like that. And I'm going to select these samples that I want an average of for the total suspended solids like that. And there we go. I'm going to do the same over there, and I can actually copy this formula, and it should work out for me. And I'm going to do the same for turbidity. Now, something that I suggest you do that's going to save you a little bit of grief later is take these cells where the average is and those empty cells, and what you're going to do is merge and center them again. Okay, and that's going to put all of those three together. It's going to save you a little bit of grief later. Trust me, it's definitely worthwhile to do that. And the last one is, I guess we forgot to insert a column for this. It's total dissolved solids. So sorry about that. Let me go back and insert that last column. I'm going to insert one more column over here. I'm going to go insert. This one here is total dissolved solids, and that one is TDS. Okay, something like that. And what I'll do is I'll wrap that so we can see the whole thing, and make it a little bit bigger. And maybe what I will do is fill that one in a new color. There we go, so that we can see that one. So total dissolved solids is the last formula. I'm just going to grab that one here now. And there is the total dissolved solids formula. And you can see there it is, that total dissolved solids is total solids. So TS minus total suspended solids. So in this case, what I want you to do is just use the average values that we just calculated. Okay, so I'm going to put my formula in there. I hit equals. I'm going to grab this value here minus this value here. So J7 minus 07, and hit enter, and I get a value there. I'm also going to merge these cells as well. Like I said, it's going to save us a little bit of grief later on when we're putting this thing up. So one thing I want you to do at this stage, if you have any negative numbers, like right here, for example, let's actually change it to a 0. Okay, so we'll proceed on to the next step. And the next step is, we already did that one, is number 4. So number 4 now, you're going to copy your table into a third tab, and you're going to label it Final Report. You're going to add a report header. You're going to hide columns of rough data and hide rows showing replicates. So I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. And then you're going to tidy up and format your table by resizing everything. And I want a bunch of different features on this. So you're going to add borders, bolded text, underlined text, colored cells, all those kind of things. And all your numbers should be reported to 2 decimal points. So your table is going to be nice, it's going to be personalized, and that's what's going to be put into the final report as well. So let me take a look and I'll show you how to do that. So here we are with all of our data, and notice I've got it labeled Final Report. I have a Final Report too because I needed to make a separate one. So let's just take a look at all the things that we needed to do that it says in number 4. So first it says at the top of the worksheet you need a report header. So what you can do is insert a few columns like that. And it's the same report header that you're going to have for every lab. So you're going to have the title of the lab, so Lab 6. Solids analysis. You're going to have the name of the course, your name, your partner's names, the dates the lab was done, and the date the lab report is submitted, and all that. So I'm not going to type all that at the moment. Number 2, for number 4, it says hide all the columns of the rough data. So I'm going to show you how to do that now, because if you take a look at this, what we care about is really just this. For total solids, we just care about the average value. So here's what you should do to save yourself some grief. You should make sure that this total solids, you have this merged and centered over there. If it's not merged and centered, you may just have to type it in a little bit later. So I'm doing that for everything. Every place where there's an average, I'm going to merge and center it if you haven't done that already. And like I said, this is going to save us a little bit of grief in the long run, believe me. You want to save yourself a little grief. If you don't do it and you need to just do some more typing, that's fine. So what we need to do is just get rid of all the rough data. We want the averages. So this column for replicates, I don't need that anymore. So if I right click on that, I can hit hide, and that will hide that column. So notice it goes A, B, C, and then D is missing. So D is hidden in there. So the settleable solids is good because there's only one value for that. And the total solids, I don't need the mass of the dish and the residue and the volume, and I just need the average. So all of these columns I'm going to hide. So I'm going to right click and hit hide. So what I want to do is just resize these to make them look kind of nice. And I'm going to do the same thing for total suspended solids. So hide that one as well. Total dissolved solids is good. Turbidity, I'm going to hide that as well. And if you're missing any headings, you may need to go and get them now. Now I don't need this row as well, so I'm going to hide that. And so at this point, what you want to do is go along and kind of make things look a little pretty, okay? So, you know, if you can't see the words, you can stretch it out, you can wrap them, you know, so that we can see them. And we're trying to basically tidy this up a little bit. The turbidity, you can see I forgot to hide the average. So I'm going to do that. The settleable solids, maybe I'll do the same and pretty that up. So all of mine are already at 2 decimal places. And so what I'm going to do is just show you how to change that. There's a couple of different ways to do it. The easiest way to do it is right up here, up there where it says number. So I can, if you see, I click this, it's increasing my number of decimal places, or if I click it the other way, and it's changing all of my numbers to 2 decimal places. Okay, what else is it saying? So I've hit all the replicates. I got to make sure my observations are still there. It looks good. I'm looking for anything else in the instructions. Make sure you do go through the instructions and make sure you include everything. So it's telling you to add borders. So I'll show you now how to do borders. This is the time to do borders once you have everything kind of where you want them to be. And I'm just going to make sure, let's see here, there we go. Okay, so to do borders, I'll show you over here in a blank part of it. You select the part that you want to border, and you go over here, and there's this little icon, and you can see it looks like borders. So you can select what you want. So you can see all the options: bottom border, top border, all borders, thick outside border. So I'm just going to make a thick outside border on this little part. And so that's how you do borders. So make sure you have some borders and make sure it looks nice. We want bolded text, underlined text. So all of those features are up here in the top left where it says font, just where you would find them in Microsoft Word. Underlined text, colored text. So colored cells. So you can make some of the cells nice and colored by using this little fill feature. Make sure you have some nice colors. What we don't want, for example, I'll show you some bad colors. Don't do something like that. Though that's a terrible color. We want some nice colors for these kind of things. What you want to do is pretty up your chart and make it look good so that you know, when you hand it in for the report. So I'll show you an example of a final report. This one here, you can see there's the title, the experiment, and the date, and all those kind of things. I don't have the colored text and all that yet. I did this black and white for the lab manual. And so what you can do is now copy and paste this and put this into a Word document. And your last instruction is that you're going to answer the questions in the Word document and hand it in as a report. So this is very similar to Lab 5 in that what you're going to do is hand in the Excel sheet, plus you're going to hand in a short report.